Alakazam, spider web, lonely red monkey mud too. Stir them in my witch's brew. I got magic. Alakazam, my witch's brew. What's it gonna do to you? Floor wax, thumbtacks, purple pink tooth. Stir them in my witch's brew. I got magic. Alakazam, fingernails, lunch pails, apple cores too. Stir them in my witch's brew. I got magic. Alakazam, my witch's brew. What's it gonna do to you? Wrinkle food, mushroom, motor oil too. Stir them in my witch's brew. I got magic. Alakazam, yeah, I got magic. Alakazam.
Hello, all you criminals, athletes, brains, and basket cases alike. Thanks for stopping by for another stream by BCF. This one was actually supposed to be a Halloween stream, but because of some overlapping with some other YouTubers that I especially like, I decided to reschedule it. First of all, I mean, when bigger YouTubers that I like are streaming, then they're probably going to go there first. And second of all, I wanted to go there. So I hope that didn't inconvenience anybody, but you see where I'm coming from. Anyway, what we're talking about tonight is a true crime story. This is actually vintage true crime, and it's about a lady named Giuliana Tofana and her makeup line. You heard that right, her makeup line that was known as Aqua Tofana. Now, Giuliana Tofana was probably the biggest, not only the first serial killer that was female on record, but also the serial killer with the highest body count of probably any serial killer in history, would be my guess. In the years that she was actually practicing her trade, she took the lives of over 600 men, and that's just the ones that they know of. There's also well, it's not a legend, it actually happened, but Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, on his deathbed, when he became aware that he was about to die and had actually accepted that fact, that would have been in the autumn of 1791. He was working on his great Requiem Mass. He fell mysteriously ill, and once he had accepted the fact that he was going to die and realized that there was no chance of recovery, he started telling people that the mass he was working on was actually for himself. And his words were, "I feel definitely that I will not last much longer. I am sure that I have been poisoned. I cannot rid myself of this idea. Someone has given me Aqua Tofana and calculated the precise time of my death." Hello, home fries. Now, for over 200 centuries, so ever since he passed away, there's been a big debate over whether or not Mozart actually was a victim of Aqua Tofana or whether it was something else. they have said that he was murdered, of course. Some say he died of syphilis. Some say he died of rheumatic fever. I mean, it goes all the way to pork chops that were rotten or, I don't know, maybe poison. But, whatever the truth is in there, he was certainly convinced that this poison, one that's colorless, tasteless, odorless, and beyond detection. Now, think of that. That's really freaking brilliant. This was in the 1600s when women were pretty much not allowed to do anything without their husbands, or if they weren't married, their fathers or brothers or whatever male in their life, was the most dominant one's consent. So not only did she develop this poison that was colorless, odorless, tasteless, scentless, and could not be detected medically, she found a way to distribute it without being detected, to disguise it so that it looked completely innocent, and managed to get away with this for about 20 years, I believe. It was between 1663 and 1651, so that would have been 18 years. So she got away with that, and she actually made quite a bit of money for herself as well. Before that, we want to kind of go back a little bit and take a look at why she did what she did. And for me, the big debate here is whether or not Giuliana Tofana was a big evil serial killer, or whether she should actually be held up as a savior amongst women. Now, in the 1600s, women were pretty much considered to be property. They were not allowed to make their own decisions. They were not allowed to have jobs. They were not allowed to pretty much do anything. Once they got married, they became the property of their husbands, and most of the time they were expected to pay a hefty amount of money to the person who married them, just for the privilege, I guess, of getting them out of the house. It was said that during those times, the woman had two choices. She could get married or she could go into service. And if she went into service, that's what she did with her life for the rest of her life. She lived with that family. She took care of their home. She didn't have any life of their own. And there really wasn't any room left for any free will or any other decisions. As a matter of fact, there have been some great stories written by very celebrated authors. If anybody is familiar with the story, The Yellow Wallpaper, that's pretty much what that story is about, is how women were treated in those days. In The Yellow Wallpaper, which was by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and it was published in 1892 in the New England magazine. If anybody wants to take a look at it, though, you can Google The Yellow Wallpaper and read it for free online. It's not a very long story, but it was one of the first works of literature that were considered to be feminist in nature, and actually spoke out about the attitudes toward the mental and physical health of women in the 19th century. This particular story talks about a woman who is moved into this home by her husband, John, who's a doctor. They rented an old mansion for the summer, and he insists that they move into an upstairs nursery. And he tells her that she isn't fit, basically, to go out in public, to talk to other people, that she is hysterical, that she's not well. Like, she's told this to the point where she actually starts believing it. And one part of the story, which is actually in my mind terribly cruel, she can't have children. I believe she can't have children, or just that they've tried and they couldn't. And so he moves her into this nursery, first of all. And she becomes obsessed with the wallpaper in the room. Now, you got to think, like, this is back in the 1800s, so no TV, no radio, nothing like that. They took away her books, her writing, like she was just supposed to just sit there, I guess, and stare out the window or at the walls or whatever. So she gets obsessed with this wallpaper. And over time, she starts thinking it looks like things, and she begins to think that she sees this figure in the design and comes to believe that the woman is like creeping around, trying to get out of the pattern, which to her is very disgusting and seems to like move around and change form on her. And she gets obsessed with that and starts thinking that she needs to free this woman in the wallpaper. And then she kind of begins to mix herself up with the woman in the wallpaper and talks about how she will get free as she strips the wallpaper from the walls. And just to make it kind of short, the husband arrives home one day. The lady in the story refuses to let him in. And when he finally does come in, he finds her creeping around the room, rubbing against the wallpaper and exclaiming that I've got out at last in spite of you. And the end of it is very funny. She says something like, now, why should that silly man have fainted? So it's actually the reason that is so important is because women weren't allowed to speak out then. You know, we were just supposed to be these pretty little pieces of property meant to keep house, have babies, and be taken out every now and then to show off and make our husbands look good. So back in these days, you know, if you got a good marriage, you know, and were lucky enough for that to happen, then good on you. But a lot of women were put into arranged and often loveless marriages. Um, those marriages, once they were in them, you know, there was no getting out. And if the husband saw it fit to beat her, if he saw fit to work her to death, or if he got his interests um, distracted by another cuter or hotter woman or the lady down the street or whatever, then he could just decide to kill her off and nobody would really question him all that much. As a matter of fact, mental health was a really scary thing, especially for women back in those days, because that is one of the main ways that men got rid of pesky women. And women were often committed to sanitariums against their will for absolutely insane things. What I've got up here is some reasons for admissions that came from the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And this is actually in the state I'm from, by the way, in 1864 to 1889. And these are some of the reasons for admission during those years. I'm just going to read a few of them. Kicked in the head by a horse, ill treatment by husband, imaginary female trouble, hysteria. Now, hysteria is an interesting one because hyst, actually is the Latin prefix for having to do with female. So, you know, like hysterectomy, hysteria, you know, hysterectomy is the removal of women's parts. Hysteria is basically a female going crazy. So if you have hysterics, you're acting like a crazy girl, is basically what you're saying. Immoral life, imprisonment. So they could actually, you know, lock you in a lunatic asylum, just, I guess, imprisonment just as a way to get you out of their hair. Didn't even really need a reason. Jealousy and religion, laziness. If you thought your bitch was lazy, you could just stick her in the institution and get it out your face. Masturbation for 30 years. Now, these are actually cases, reasons that women were admitted during these times. So these aren't like set standards or anything. These are just reasons that women were admitted. Marriage of sons. So like her son got married, she got depressed, they stuck her in the crazy house. menstrual deranged. So she had really bad PMS, that lady. Really bad PMS, and ended up in the nut house. Mental excitement, novel reading. The girl reads books. Overaction of the mind. This one actually makes me laugh because you guys know I'm from West Virginia, but parents were cousins was one of them. So yeah, I can laugh about that. Let's see. Fever and loss of lawsuit. Asthma. I have asthma. So if I had lived between the ages of or year of 1864 and 1889, I could have been locked in a nut house because I needed an inhaler. Let's see. Bad whiskey. Bad habits. Carbonic acid gas, which I'm pretty sure is like acid reflux. Deranged masturbation. I don't even know what to say about that one. Like, how do you decide between deranged masturbation and suppressed masturbation? So suppressed means you're not touching yourself, and deranged means you're doing it too much, I guess. So whether she touched herself or not, bitch was going into the crazy house. One was just women's troubles, uterine derangement. I don't even know what to say about that one because I'm not even sure what it is. Superstition, smallpox. So she doesn't go to the hospital. She goes in the nut house. Greediness. Let's see. Salvation Army, which is another one that I can't really figure out. Feebleness of intellect. So if she reads too much and studies too much, she goes in the nut house. And if she don't study enough, she goes in the nut house. Let's see here. There's a few others. I actually loaded up a few of these. Before battery through USB? Yes, definitely. Anything for OCD? Actually, I think there might be in here. Hang on a second. Let me. I hate it when StreamYards is an asshole. Here, let me. I guess I'm going to have to take it down because it's not. Hold on. I'll take it down and pull it back up. Because it don't like to open up the new one for me. Hang on a second. Okay. Oh, that one I can't read. That one's bad. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay, this one I'm just going to read because there's only a few, but this was the Massachusetts State Hospital in 1843. Domestic afflictions, religiousness, disappointed affections, epilepsy, abuse of snuff and tobacco, and for the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, 1841 to 1842, loss of property, dread of poverty. Here's the disappointed affections again. Intense study, domestic difficulties, fright at fires. So she's afraid of fire and she goes in the nut house. Loss of friends, religious excitement, want of employment. So she wants to go get a job. Husband doesn't like that, and it's off to the nut house for you. Mental anxiety. So I guess that would have been OCD, I guess, back then, because they probably didn't actually have like OCD, but nymphomania was actually one of the ones in that first list. So those are just some of the things that you could be locked up for, that women were locked up for in those years. And of course, it was against her will. without any proper medical treatment, without any proper testing done or any proper diagnosing. And the treatments that were done, oh my gosh, let me tell you, the way that women, well, anybody, I guess, was treated for mental illness back in those days was just so brutal. Um, and some of these practices have only in the last few years been discontinued, like as early as like the 70s and 80s. And even still today, some of this stuff is still going on. Some of the things they don't do anymore would have been like there was I forget the exact name for it, but what they do is they would take the woman into, or I think they did this on men too, I'm not exactly sure. But they would take them into like a bathroom or whatever, where they would have, Aqua therapy, I think is what it was called. And they would put them into this tub. And it was like a hot tub, you know. So they put them in and they give them enough time to relax. And then they turn the heat way up to the point where it was like boiling and make them sit in there. And then when they got to the point, you know, where they couldn't take it anymore, they'd take them out and like their skin would actually be blistered and boiling, like they basically boiled them alive. And then they would put them in a bath of ice water and make them sit in that for so many minutes. I mean, just brutal things. And then of course there's the more well-known ones like uh, transorbital lobotomies, where they literally would take an ice pick and poke you in the eye with it. Well, in your eye socket, not the actual eye, but they would poke you in your eye socket, twist it, and just gouge out a piece of your brain on each side of the head. And for people who were unlucky enough to have that done to them, it basically turned them into zombies. It left them just as nothing but a shuffling kind of shell of a person. Uh, and what has kind of taken the place of that is electroshock therapy, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think is still practiced in some areas today. I'm not exactly sure. I could be wrong about that, but if it is no longer practiced, it's been very recently that it stopped. Um, yes, Nurse Ratchet worked there. Yeah, some of the stuff that I've been talking about, they actually did in that show. Um, but and that was supposed to have taken place in the 70s, and I'm sure they probably did some research on that. Um, but electroshock therapy pretty much had the same effect as a lobotomy did, but it was more short-lived. The major effects that like really turned them into zombies and stuff, I think, kind of wore off over time, but it would still leave them damaged, and they were never the same once they had that done. And I actually had a family member myself who was subjected to that. And let me tell you, it's brutal. I mean, if you have to put something in their mouth to keep them from biting their tongue off, you shouldn't be doing that against their will. I mean, you can't torture somebody into mental health. But anyway, one of the big worries of running afoul of your husband, and sometimes that could happen no matter how hard you tried to do everything right. Um, One of the biggest worries is that you would be thrown into an institution and forgotten and just kind of left there to die and be tortured. Um, and so Giuliana Tofana actually became known, hello, Lord of Darkness, as Saint Julia by many of her, I guess you could call them clients or customers. Um, so a bit on her history, she actually came from a family that was kind of known for poisoning. Uh, Her mother, whose name was Sophania, I believe, um, de Adamo, and she actually murdered her husband, Francis de Adamo, and she was executed in Palermo, Sicily on July 12th of 1633. And at that time, Giuliana was 13 years old. So she kind of followed along behind her mother, but she did a better job. First, she got a job working at an apothecary, which was their name for a pharmacist. So she got a job working as an apothecary. God, I can't talk. And she made perfumes and cosmetics mostly. And she had her daughter was working with her, and she had 3 employees as well. And when she was caught in 1659, her daughter and the 3 employees were executed along with her. And to me, it's kind of a tragedy because for every life they took, they saved at least one life, if not more. Because a lot of times when an unwanted wife was discarded, the children, the product of that marriage, were also discarded as well. But when it was at its peak of popularity, Aqua Tofana, I mean, it pretty much made her rich, and it was legendary. And in part of the reason why it was such a genius idea was because it was packaged in a way that made it so nobody would ever suspect what it really was. First, she sold it bottled up as a perfume, but of course that didn't work because it's odorless. It's odorless, colorless. So that didn't really work. So they also tried religious healing oils in these little vials decorated with an image of St. Nicholas of Bari. And the picture that I used in my thumbnail is actually a picture of one of those bottles. Let me see. I have a picture of another picture of the bottle here. Let me see if I can find it for you. Oh God, I hate you, StreamYards. Okay, let's try it this way. Oops. The bottles were actually really, really pretty. So that's kind of why I want to show them to y'all. Hang on a second. Now, this bottle is like 400 years old, keep in mind. So it's a little weathered looking, but it still gives you an idea of how awesome looking. Look at how pretty that is. And so anyway, I guess this was one of the healing oils or religious oils that she sold. But this recipe, which they think actually was refined by Juliana and her daughter, it was actually developed by her mother, was diverted into cosmetics eventually and put into like powders and makeup. And thing is that the makeup that women used back then actually contained a lot of things that are known now to be very, very poison. Like it was not unusual to take drops of belladonna and put it in your eye holes to make your pupils dilate. And I believe, I can't remember what they all were, but there was another one that like made you flush. And all these things are known to be poisonous now, but back then they just knew made you look pretty. So this particular concoction was arsenic, lead, and belladonna lace. And so it was set up, or it was put into a package as makeup. So the woman could just take it and set it out on her bedroom table. She didn't have to hide it or anything. She could carry it around in her compact, whatever. And when her husband wasn't looking, all it took was about 4 drops of this Aqua Tofana in hubby's drink or soup or morning oats or porridge or whatever. And it would have to be done over a period of days. And what would happen is he would start out, not feeling very good for a little while and kind of seem like maybe had a stomach flu, and then it would progress into making him terribly sick. And then he would die of this unknown disease, and nobody ever knew what happened to Mr. Blah, blah, blah. And because medicine was what it was back then, they didn't really have a way to detect most poisons and things. Even with an autopsy, I don't know why I'm having trouble with words today. I can't word. It's just, sorry, folks. But even with an autopsy, the science they had back then, couldn't really detect it. So it took a lot to prove that there was anything hinky going on. And she would actually give lessons to her customers on how to act, what to do. She could actually, they'd have time. This is one of the genius things about it. If it was a young couple and little Miss Smithton Woodhouse, because they always had 2 or 3 last names back then, especially if they had money, knew that her husband was getting ready to throw her over for Marianne Margulies from down the lane, she could give her husband this Aqua Tofana. And as he started getting sicker and realizing that he was going to die, he would want to set up his will to take care of his wife and whatever children there were. And, might even on his deathbed confess to some of his transgressions. So the widow is left with this wonderful place in society, because usually widows of men of stature were very well respected. And that was actually the third option. She could marry, she could go into service, or she could have a dead husband. And if you were the widow Woodhouse Smithson, then you were very much respected. Everybody would band together to make sure that you were okay. Your community would provide for you, take care of your house, and in a lot of cases, she'd end up with a hefty inheritance at the end of it all. So Giuliana Tofana killed a lot of men, but many people saw her as a charitable service provider. So this was an arranged marriage era. Like, arranged marriages were still very much a thing back then. And abused wives had no escape option, nothing you could do. So a lot of people, called her an angel of mercy. They called her Saint Juliana. They pretty much worshipped her for what she did. And I believe that if she hadn't gotten so popular, maybe she wouldn't have been caught. They had this whole underground thing where, all her customers for the longest time had to be vetted. She had to talk to them. She had to make sure that they were really in a desperate situation. And I believe that as time went by, um, she just got greedy. She was making money, and she started worrying more about marketing. And eventually what happened is she sold her product to somebody who was greedy, and she got knocked out. That's what happened. One of her customers narked on her. So what exactly happened is that a lady who decided that she wanted to kill her husband, and it's believed that she actually was just looking for an early inheritance. So this wasn't somebody who was in danger of being sent away or losing her life. She just wanted rid of her husband. And so she poisoned his soup, and then she chickened out at the last second. So she served him his soup, and right before he was going to take a bite, she flipped out and she screamed, "Don't eat that!" And like knocked it out of his hand. And, her husband jumps up. He's like, "What the fuck?" And so she ends up telling him everything. And she ended up he forced her to go to the authorities and tell her story. And then Juliana, her customers went to her and they were like, "Girl, you've been dimed. Somebody has narked you out. You best go run because they're coming for you." And so Juliana up and ran to the church and asked for sanctuary. And they actually gave it to her. The church protected her until a rumor was spread that she poisoned the water supply. And when that happened, a mob actually overran the church and broke down the doors and took her to the authorities. So over a period of time, as I said earlier, she actually confessed to poisoning over 600 men. And that was between the years of 1633 and 1651. And that body count exceeds any of the body counts of any of our known serial killers. So for example, like I looked up a few different serial killers, and the one that I found that had the highest rate. Now I may be wrong because I didn't like do heavy duty research to find out, but the biggest one that I found was Harold Shipman, who had 128 verifiable murders. She had 600, but she was tortured, and so in this day and age, when you look back on it, it's possible that she confessed to some murders that she did not do. But in Minnie's opinion and in mine, actually, she was a modern day hero, one of the first feminists. Yes, she was a serial killer, but I've always been one of those people who believe two wrongs don't make a right. I'm very much against the idea of the death penalty, for instance. And that's because I don't think that you make things right by doing something else that's equally wrong. But I believe that if you need to protect yourself or somebody who cannot protect themselves, so if you're protecting yourself or somebody who is weaker and more helpless than you are, then sometimes it's justifiable. And in this case, I feel like what these women did was actually self-defense. And yeah, I really don't hold it against her. I feel like it was necessary, and that I would say probably, on the average, she probably saved at least 2 lives for every life she took. But there was a lot in the Renaissance era. There was a lot of poisons. Like poison was a thing. Uh, there was a whole family. Oh gosh, they made the movie on, or not movie. There was a TV show on, I think it was HBO, about this family. Oh my gosh. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. Um, anybody can remember, I think it started with the Borgias, sorry. They were famous poisoners, and they were pretty deranged people, actually. But that was their thing, it was Renaissance Italy, and they were very noble, very well-to-do people, and they poisoned a lot of people. That's a whole other story in itself, so I won't get like really into the Borgias, but they liked to poison people with arsenic. But Giuliana's was her own kind of invention, and she came up with it all on her own. And as I said, I believe it was the first women's movement, because women's rights actually didn't begin until the late 1800s. The very first gathering that was devoted to women's rights in the United States was held in July of 1848. And Juliana, started doing what she do in the 1600s. So she was 200 years ahead of everybody else. And I myself think that this is just, something just kind of funny that I was thinking of. Like, I think it would be awesome if somebody developed a makeup line and kind of use that, as a tongue-in-cheek kind of inspiration. And I said that when I heard about it. And then I got a message or a YouTube notification from one of my very favorite ever YouTubers. And her name is Bailey Sarian. If any of you all are familiar with her, I've got links in my description box for her channel and for her. She actually did a video on Aqua Tofana also. But she has a nail polish line that is inspired by Aqua Tofana. And I might get hit with this, but I have a small audience right now. So if I get hit with this, we'll pause it and come back in a minute. But I want to show it to you all because I think it's effing hilarious. And so we'll see if I get in trouble and stopped for showing it. Just 1 second here. All right, I think this is so cute. I love this lady. And like I said, her channel is down below, and she doesn't need my help, but go subscribe to her if you're not already.
Are you tired of this? Then you need Aqua Tofana. It's a clear, odorless, flavorless wonder compound that solves your biggest problems. Our 100% vegan formula uses our signature blend of lead, arsenic, and belladonna to help you live your best life. If you have the types of problems that make you feel overwhelmed, underappreciated, or inferior, Aqua Tofana is your answer. Just ask this happy customer.
Melody, can I ask you a question?
Busy.
Melody, what do you think about Aqua Tofana?
Natural causes.
Now, that was her in the beginning, and I'm not going to like run this all the way through without stopping, so maybe I won't get a claim and have to cut it out. But all these little actresses like are all her. And this lady is a makeup artist, and she does, which I absolutely love, a Get Ready With Me on Mondays, and she calls it Murder, Mystery, and Makeup. It's like she tells a true crime story while she does her daily makeup. And during the month of October, she does Halloween makeup. And so she's a lot of fun to watch.
Get ready to take your life from this to this. Aqua Tofana has over 600 5-star reviews. Whether you use it to gain more freedom or
600 5-star reviews, if you didn't catch that. So those are the different colors of her nail polish line that's inspired by Aqua Tofana.
Or just give yourself a little day at the spa. Aqua Tofana is sure to get the job done.
And I love that gold, by the way.
Aqua Tofana, Aqua Tofana, Aqua Tofana, Aqua Tofana, Aqua Tofana. No.
Be sure to check out her badass dress too, the one with the roses on it. I love it. That one.
Am I going mental or something? What is this?
I love that freaking dress.
Okay, I get it. What the? Aqua Tofana. Am I in the Twilight Zone? What was that? Aqua Tofana. Go left. You are freaking me out, lady.
Go left. Make a left.
Whatever. Oh, cute.
You see that dress? How pretty? Oh my God, I love it.
Really? Aqua Tofana lady? House slippers? Hey, stupid ass Aqua Tofana lady. What is this bullshit? For it. It's hot. Yeah. Jeez. He's there yet? What are you trying to tell me? Just look on the table. Oh! Aqua Tofana. That's today. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Anyway, that's her promo video for Nail Polish Line. Like, if you want to see the whole thing, you can go to her channel and look. Antidote Loud, Juliana, Saint, I guess because they called her Saint Juliana. But anyway, that is where I got the interest in Aqua Tofana, and I researched and put together my own story and facts and added in some things that I thought were pertinent to the story as well. So, but she was the one who gave me the idea for it. And I think it's a really unusual story because it's not something that you commonly hear about. You know, it's not one of those stories that are told a lot, which go figure, because we hear a lot about Lizzie Borden, who was just, you know, if she did it, was just being selfish and trying to keep her inheritance. But nobody talks about Saint Juliana, who saved over 600 women's lives and maybe as many children or more. So basically, that's it. We have such a teeny audience today. I doubt there's anybody who wants to come up on the panel today, but just in case anybody wants to talk, there's my link. And we'll fart around for a few minutes and just hang out and see if anybody decides that they want to come up and talk. I have some other things in the works. There's something I've been kicking around lately, and I'm not 100% for sure how I feel about it. But for those who don't know, my mom, who I'm extremely close to, was kidnapped when she was younger. And she was kidnapped not just once, but twice. So I told her story before, but it was on my other channel. And as everybody knows, I'm rebuilding now from the ground up. And so all of that content that I had on my other channel is gone. I am waffling between the idea of telling the story myself and having my mom on to tell it. So I'm really not sure, what the best way to do that is, or whether I should tell it and then have her on to answer questions about it. And she is very, very technophobic, so there's no way she would ever be able to figure out StreamYard. We'd have to do like a speakerphone type situation, but I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, a story like that, and it's very interesting. One of the stories was very, very serious and actually quite scary. It's like a let's not meet type situation for sure. The second one is almost funny, especially to hear her tell it, because her main memory from it is that when it happened, she was with one of her friends, and her friend had these talon razor sharp fingernails and kept on grabbing her arm and like digging her fingernails in. And, that was like, I guess, the main thing that keeps coming through in that memory is her friend. Well, I always call her my aunt. She's not really my aunt, but her friend, my aunt, just digging those nails in and, drawing blood because she was so scared, and about how she was going to try to attack him with an umbrella. And the person who saved them, in essence, was a celebrity stuntman. So it's an interesting story. And the second story is just freaking terrifying. And I actually carry a clip in my wallet from the newspaper that tells the story of the second one, just to remind me that my mom is a badass, and that if she hadn't been as brave as she was, that I wouldn't be here today, and neither would she. So I'm going to think on that, but I think that might be what I do next week, whether I have her on or whether I just tell it myself. I think that may be what I do next week. I've also had some requests and recommendations that were emailed to me. One are some like UFO type things. I've got some true crime requests, and of course, there's always the Mothman possibilities. I'd like to hear from anybody who's watching, of stuff they'd like to hear. I want to build my channel around things that you all want to see. So I appreciate all four of you coming out to this one. We need to get more people into this chat, like get it back to like it was in the old days, I think. I think we can do it, if we build it together. So for you guys who are in the chat now, and for those who come later, do me a favor and just share my channel link. And, we want to get some people in here and build up a nice little chat. I'm not trying to be the biggest YouTuber out there. I'm not trying to make a living off of it or anything. We just want to have fun here. And we're going to do that, and as always, this platform is an open platform. My panel is always open, and nobody will be banned or blocked. Always welcome to speak your mind, even if it's to disagree, as long as you follow our one rule. And that one rule is, say it with me, folks, don't be an asshole. And I think I'm going to make this a short one and end things with another Halloween witch song. And I'm just going to remind you all that deep inside, we're all a princess, a brain, an athlete, a criminal, and a basket case. Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
was an old witch, believe it if you can. She tapped on the window and she ran. She ran helter-skelter with her toes in the air, cornstalks flying from the old witch's hair. There was an old witch, believe it if you will. She flew through the air very fast until she stopped, waved her wand, then she croaked, "Goodbye!" Halloween Eve when the witches fly. Swish goes the broomstick, meow goes the cat, flop goes the hop-toad sitting on her hat. We chuckled, I want fun, Halloween night when the witches run. Halloween night when the witches run.